2022 or Death Holler brought us Season 3, Slash or Pass. It became the classic horror film podcast of its time. And now Death Holler brings us the most shocking season ever.
10 more parts.
Season 4, Dead or Dead.
Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.
Imagine, if you will, that one of the hosts is absolutely terrified of zombies.
So, what's the plan? Bash him in the head, that seems to work out.
Now, accept the fact there is no escaping this horror. Death Holler brings back the dead. Remember, when you're in Death Holler, listener discretion is advised. With hospitality like this, you'll never want to leave. We hope you stay alive.
When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth.
Welcome back to Death Holler. I am your host and Omega Man, the Reverend Dr. Death, and joining me in this sojourn into the apocalypse is the legend herself, Llareyna. Think you could take on a pack of fast-running vampires, Llareyna?
I mean, I would prefer not to because exercise is just not in the afterlife for me. I'd rather not, but thank you. I'll pass.
I think I would too. Yes, we are reviewing a selection of vampire films during zombie season. It might seem like we've jumped track not even a month in, but hear me out, folks. This is part of the modern zombies history. All of the films we're covering today are versions of the novel written in 1954 by prolific genre writer Richard Matheson. He's famous for such classics as Nightmare at like 20,000 Feet, I believe is the name of the episode on the Twilight Zone, where, Shatner's looking out the window and sees the creature on the wing of the plane. Steven Spielberg's first movie, Duel, is actually based upon a story by Richard Matheson. So he's got a lot of bona fides in the genre. But why is this novel important? Well, it is documented as one of the main sources of inspiration for a young filmmaker by the name of George Romero. Don't know who that is.
I've never heard of him.
When he was coming up with the concept of a little movie called Night of the Living Dead. The zombie apocalypse idea came about because of the novel I Am Legend, which is the one we're speaking of. So today we're going to discuss 3 different film takes upon that seminal novel, all with varying faithfulness to the source material. So make sure the garlic is still fresh, gas up the generator, and barricade yourselves against the undead hordes as we discuss The Last Man on Earth, The Omega Man, and I Am Legend. First, if you're enjoying the podcast, we'd appreciate it if you could take the time to like, comment, subscribe on whatever podcast platform you prefer. It helps us get more visibility on podcast listings and helps us grow. Also, consider following us on social media. You can find us on TikTok and Twitter under Death Holler Pod, and we can be found on Instagram and Facebook under Death Holler Podcast. We appreciate everyone who listens and hope you enjoy the show. Let's attack some bees.
What is that? What is that? What is it? Oh, no, not the bees! Not the bees! Ah! Open my eyes!
I didn't quite say that when I was watching this particular movie that I'm going to bring up, but it wasn't far off. Not my eyes, please. The movie I'm talking about this episode is I Am Omega from 2006.
That is such a ripoff.
Yeah.
That's like trying to get your Omega Man and I Am Legend from Wish.
It basically is. So this movie is if you know that those how they used to do Redbox. Well, I don't know if you was big into them, but Redbox used to have this thing where they had these also ran movies. So if like Sharknado was going on, like and real big on like sci-fi, Redbox would have a bunch of movies that were knockoffs, like Bear Tornado or whatever. Something stupid,
Cocaine Sharks.
Cocaine Sharks. This is that type of movie, and it was made literally a year. It was made before this, but it was released right as they were ramping up the advertising for I Am Legend with Will Smith. So it was a cash in.
It's 2006. Okay, I totally missed that because I was thinking that this was around the time Omega Man / Last Man on Earth. Okay.
No, they filmed this, I think, maybe early 2000s. It kind of got left in the, development hell. And then, I don't know if it would have got released, but then I Am Legends, started getting traction. Or like, hey, we might get some money out of this. Let's release this.
Jesus.
Tagline, the last man alive must battle a planet of the dead. I mean, that's the general plot of these movies, so that works.
Yeah.
Directed by Griff First. What a name. Written by Jeff Mead, who did the screenplay based upon the novel by Richard Matheson, obviously. Music by David Raiklin and Mark Waters. Principal players, we have Mark Dacascos. I don't know. Dacascos. I'm going to go with that.
I have no idea. Your guess is as good as mine.
Who plays Renchard, our seemingly lone survivor. I'll get to that in a minute. He was in movies such as Brotherhood of the Wolf, John Wick Chapter 3, and Double Dragon. He's kind of just, he's more of an action type star, and this movie plays more to action than any of the other ones actually do. So it's in that vein. Got a vaguely Asian appearance. I don't know what ethnicity Mark is, but that's kind of what he's got going on. And they use him a lot for those roles.
Okay.
Jennifer Lee Wiggins plays Brianna, who is a girl who seems to be immune to the virus. A lot of the plot revolves around trying to rescue her from the city because since she's immune, they're wanting to try to synthesize her blood and try to make a cure out of it.
Does she have one eye that's different color than the others? I mean, let's just rip off from multiple movies,
I don't think she does. I mean, she's not a bad looker, to be honest, and there is some chemistry between her and the main character toward the end of the movie, so there's that. She was in movies such as Hornet, Arctic Apocalypse, and Asteroid Ageddon, so she's used to these knockoff movies.
Okay. Arctic Apocalypse. All right.
Jeff Mead, also one of the screenplay writer, that should tell you something. He's the third lead in this movie. Plays Vincent. He's one of a pair of misfits out to save Brianna, or is he? Actually turns out that him and the guy that he rides up with are like part of a faction who sees Brianna as a threat to the new way of life. They like having the world be a post-apocalyptic mess because it got rid of all the bullshit, and they don't want her going back and saving it. So they're out to take her out, basically.
Okay. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Who's the minority? That's all I'm saying.
He was in Four Horsemen, The Apocalypse, Resident Evil Extinction, and Asteroid Ageddon. So he's got some links there with Jennifer Wiggins. That's probably why she did this. And strangely, he was in Fast Five. So he's been in some, these are bits parts, obviously, but he's been in some higher level stuff. Ryan Lloyd plays Mike, who's the other misfit. The only thing I ever saw of interest on his IMDb was Night of the Hell Hamsters. I don't think I would want to watch that, but that could be a nice, Attack of the Bees for
when bad animals go bad. Yep.
Yeah. And then finally, Joshua Schlegel plays Renchard's son in the past tense. She's shown for a brief scene at the beginning of the movie. when the vampire apocalypse starts, the babysitter or whoever it is trying. It doesn't really establish who the woman is. It might even been Richard's wife. Is trying to get him out of the house, trying to get him to safety, and they both get taken out by a vamp. So,
Okay, so just so we're clear for all 13 of our listeners, I think 18. We're growing. I'm just kidding. We're talking about vampire zombies, correct?
They are more like zombies in this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, there's very little vampire to them other than the fact that they don't go out during the daylight. That's it.
Yeah, because I feel like that is... So there's zombie vampires.
Basically.
Okay. Trying to lay the foundation a little bit just so people don't get confused. Like, why are you talking about vampires? They're a hybrid.
Well, when I talk about Last Man on Earth, I'll get into that more. This movie doesn't deserve the length of the novel because it's in the barest minimal to the novel that you could possibly be. It does have the closest to zombies of any of these movies, though. Like I said, the actual, and I want to say that there is a scene during the daytime where one of the guys gets attacked out in the open by the vampires. So even like the dates, they're not out during the daytime thing is not even held to as much in this movie. Kind of just a cash grab, you know, for all it is. So, synopsis: after losing his son during the first days of the ghoul apocalypse, I'm just going to call them ghouls because they're closer to that than they are anything else.
Okay.
Richard fills his days scouring the city for nests of ghouls and his nights trying to communicate with any of other survivors. He has about given up and accepted he is the only man left alive when he sees an internet video, which is a whole other thing. If the apocalypse is happening, I don't know how the internet's up and running, but we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Of a young woman claiming to be immune to the virus. Thinking he is going insane, Richard refuses to accept the video is real until two survivalist misfits from a nearby colony blow up his home in a very bad CGI explosion and demand he helps them save the girl. L.A. is rotten. The dead are a-knocking, and Richard is ready to blow the whole place to hell because that's the reason they're having to go there to save her. He has rigged C4 to, like, throughout the entire fucking city somehow over the course of the years that this apocalypse has been going on, and he's just ready to blow L.A. all the fuck up.
This movie was made in, 2006?
Yes.
You think this was the foretelling of Los Angeles now? I mean, like, I'm going to be honest with you. The only thing keeping Los Angeles alive is Disneyland and Universal Studios. That's it. I
would say that John Carpenter's Escape from L.A. is probably closer to how L.A. would be or is now probably. But if you've never seen that, it's got some interesting post-apocalyptic L.A. stuff going on.
Are we doing a post-apocalyptic season? Because it's hard to do that when we're doing zombie season, and that is the forefront of apocalyptia.
We might do a John Carpenter season.
Okay. And then we can, okay.
Or link him with some other major director and like make a season out of it. Because I don't know, we've already parceled out a little bit of John Carpenter stuff already, so we'll see.
True.
It's hard to fit like Escape from New York and Escape from LA into anything because they're not really horror movies or just post-apocalypse movies.
Yeah, but that scares the shit out of some people. Like that really gets people down to the core.
It is true. This movie got cheesy acting. The zombie visuals are not bad. They actually put some decent. And I will say this: the zombies in this, or the ghouls, are actually better than anything that they put in I Am Legend. So I will give them that because they at least went with, practical effects. But acting's terrible. Movie barely, has the same kind of plot as like a million different zombie movies with only just scant connections to I Am Legend, the book. So it is, unless you're wanting to complete your viewing of any of the I Am Legend movie adaptations, I would not watch this.
Yeah, the zombies don't look terrible, but the actors look so fucking cheesy.
They're pretty damn bad.
Yeah, it's funny because you wouldn't think that just looking at somebody, you'd be like, yeah, that looks like they're a terrible actor. No, they actually do. It's funny. I feel bad.
And it has all, it has all the markings of one of these knockoff movies that are cash grabs. I mean, like the CGI is just bad. I mean,
you got the hot babe with decent knockers.
that she's one highlight because, like I said, she's not bad. But
Yeah.
like, I mean, otherwise it's not that great of a movie. The action scenes that the main character Renshard that Mark plays, he does a pretty good job. But he's in movies as an action guy, so I mean, he's used to that. Nick Cage rating on this one, I'm going to give it sympathy for the devil. It has some interesting scenes, but it's straight to video, forgettable nothingness. Just kind of out there in the ether.
I would say that makes for a perfect Attack of the Bees.
It is all these movies. It is definitely the B movie out of all of these.
I feel like Attack of the Bees should have a rare gem every once in a while. They can't all be good B movies, They're not intended to be.
I don't try to make them good B movies.
Yeah, that's
just that, I don't hate a lot of B movies. I'll give them some kind of benefit, but this one just kind of had me looking at my phone most of the movies.
Oh, dirty.
All right, on to our first movie of the evening, The Last Man on Earth from 1964. Tagline, and this is a long one, so stay with me.
Oh, Jesus.
By night, they leave their graves, crawling, shambling through empty streets, whimpering, pleading, begging for his blood.
Jesus. I mean, okay. That's not even a tagline. That's a movie synopsis.
I know sometimes you get taglines that are, pithy and to the point, and they're actually pretty good. And others, it's like, okay, dude, you just described the entire movie. What are you trying to do here?
Are there other taglines that were used later? Like, do you know how sometimes you have extra taglines that were?
I've got some others.
Okay. I don't want to discuss them yet because I was going to be like, if there were no other taglines, what would you have used as a tagline? We can ponder that later.
Yeah. Directed by Ubaldo Regana, the Italian version, and Sidney Salco, the U.S. version.
Okay.
Written by Richard Matheson. He actually wrote this, the screenplay, but he decided after he saw the first initial viewings that he was embarrassed by it. So he changed it. He said, can I take my name off this movie? And they're like, well, you can, but then you won't get any money off of it. And he looked and he's like, yeah, my family could, use the money. He's like, okay, make my name Logan Swanson. So when you see Logan Swanson as the screenplay writer, that's actually Richard Matheson who wrote the book. So
okay. Wow. I'm okay. You know what? I'll get into why that shocks me later, but go ahead.
I will get into it too because I think that he is overly critical of this movie, but we'll get into that. William F. Leicester wrote the screenplay officially, other than Logan Swanson, and then obviously it was based on Richard Matheson's novel. Furio Monetti and Ubaldo Regana did the screenplay for the Italian version because it was released in both countries. Music by Paul Sawtelle and Bert Schefter. I don't have a budget or box office because when I tried looking that up, nobody really had the numbers for this movie, like either domestically or international. And it was the weirdest thing. Like they kind of guessed at some of the budgets, but they didn't really they didn't definitively give anything for it. So
yeah,
I was kind of surprised by that. I assume that it was a bomb, or if it did anything, standard drive-in, it just coasted along, didn't really make a lot of money, because this movie really found its footing as a cult favorite like years later, as people like watched it and said, that's actually a pretty fucking good movie, and then kind of gravitated toward it. Principal players, we have Vincent Price playing Dr. Robert Morgan. Yeah, he's not famous at all. He's the survivor and virologist of the movie, main protagonist. Changed the name, oddly, from Robert Neville in the novel, which was later picked up in the other versions, to Robert Morgan. I don't understand that part of it, but obviously Vincent Price is known for The House on Haunted Hill, the thriller voiceover that's so, famous, The Fly from 1958, House of Wax from 1953. All horror movies have been remade since then. Twice Told Tales, Tomb of Ligeia, The Pit and the Pendulum, The Mask of the Red Death, etc. Did a lot of Poe stuff back in the day for Roger Corman. Franca Batoya played Ruth Collins. She's one of the new breed. the vampires who can actually walk during the daytime. Giacomo Rossi Stewart plays Ben Cortman, who is a former co-worker of Robert's, turned into a vampire who is exclusively out to take Robert out after he dies and comes back. It's like that's his whole undead mission. Emma Daniele plays Virginia Morgan, who is Robert's wife, lost to the plague that hit. Christy Cortland plays Kathy Morgan, Robert's daughter, who was also lost to the plague. And Umberto Rajo plays Dr. Mercer, who is the former lead virologist who Robert Morgan was working under. Synopsis: Robert Morgan is the last man on Earth. Everyone around him has succumbed to a plague that causes light sensitivity, followed shortly thereafter by blindness and then death. Well, they're mostly dead. Those who aren't burned in the plague pits are reanimated with a thirst for human blood. Spending his nights barricaded in his home as the ghouls desperately try to make him their next snack, and his days hunting down the nest of the nocturnal fiends, Morgan finds his new existence to be fairly monotonous. That is, until he meets a seemingly normal girl taking a daytime stroll through the park. Ben is taunting, Morgan's memories are haunting, and the daywalkers can't abide the last man on Earth. Other taglines, in all caps: how much horror can you face?
Jesus.
Where lifeless hands reach out for warmth of human flesh, where terror walks on tiptoe begging for the blood of the last man on Earth.
Wait, that was a tagline?
The whole thing.
Whole. How much horror can you face would have been, you could have done good with that. You could have stopped there.
This one goes a little weird. I guess this was more Italian based.
Oh, yeah.
What can she want? Who can satisfy her? Soothe that half-mad sob, that lustful giggle, that tortured scream of pain. The dead know, and so does he, for he is the last man on Earth. I'm like, are they talking about that? They talking about the new vampire girl that pops up, Ruth? Because like I don't know which vampire is getting all freaky with her.
Yeah, what the heck, dude?
Do you dare to imagine what it would be like to be the last man on Earth or the last woman?
They could have stopped.
Why they had to add, I don't even know why they added the last woman part.
Equality. I don't know. That wasn't a thing back then.
Day, yeah.
No, that definitely wasn't a thing. But it would have been so good because the movie is called The Last Man on Earth. Like, not the last man and woman. The last man. Like.
I don't know. And then this last one: alive among the lifeless, alone among the crawling creatures of evil that make the night hideous with their inhuman craving.
I mean, that's better than the first one. Like the tagline they used, I would say the last one, although it kind of doesn't get to the point, but it does. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I don't know. It's one of those things where it's just they're all too long for what this movie could have used.
Here at Death Holler, we do not like the TLDR at all.
Well, I mean, if you're wanting a tagline for a movie, you want something memorable that is like short, but like, it gives you the essence of the movie in like one sentence at most or something. And some of these are fucking run-on paragraphs, I mean, for this one. Quotes: Robert Morgan, December 1965. Has it been? Is that all it has been since I inherited the world? Only 3 years. Seems like 100 million.
I bet.
Robert Morgan, another day to live through. Better get started.
Why are these all from Robert? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, like there's so many people in this movie. And I'll get to that. That's one of the criticisms of it. And I don't understand that either, but I'll discuss that in a second. Ben Cortman, there are stories being told, Bob. And then Robert, by people who are out of their minds with fear. And then Ben's by like, well, maybe, but there are too many just be coincidental stories about people who've died and have come back. And then Robert responds back, they're stories, Ben, stories. If only that were true.
Yes.
Ben Cortman, Morgan, we're going to kill you, which is what he says on repeat as a ghoul.
Yes, when he comes back.
When he comes back. Ruth Collins, you can't join us. You're a monster to them. Why do you think I ran when I saw you, even though I was assigned to spy on you? Because I was terrified what I'd heard about you. You're a legend in the city. Moving by day instead of night, leaving as evidence of your existence bloodless corpses. Many of the people you destroyed were still alive. Many of them were loved ones of the people in my group. And I left that in there because that line is, and it's in the book too, reveals that he's Neville/Morgan has not just been killing like the mindless vampires. He's been killing the ones that are the new type as well.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
that's why he is a monster to the new race of vampires. And then finally, Robert Morgan, they were afraid of me. They were afraid of me. They were afraid of me when he finally realizes that he is a legend to them. He is the monster of the movie. So the new.
Yeah. I would like to add a line, and it is, I am a man, the last man. He wanted you to know, everyone.
Whenever he's calling everybody, I like that line, but also when he calls them all freaks, I like
that
too, because he, you're just a bunch of freaks. Now, I'm going to skip around on this because I want to bring it up because we just mentioned it. Robert Morgan obviously has the bulk of the lines in this movie because the movie is mostly scenes of Vincent Price by himself living in this apocalypse with just like Ben outside screaming about how he's going to kill him for the most of the movie. They do a flashback where you see Robert's life right before the apocalypse. And I love those scenes. We'll discuss that in a little bit. But biggest criticism of this movie is that Vincent Price was not the right person to play this part. And I don't get what the criticism is of that. They said that he doesn't seem like, their argument is that Vincent Price, I guess because he is so associated with playing these like European, like gothic horror people that, like his accent and the way he carries himself, that he doesn't seem like an everyman USA guy that would be like the, just the standard stock, like, hero that you would imagine in a movie like this.
You don't know who, when it comes to being these specific movies, you don't know who is going to be the last man. It could be a thin, frail, pale guy that, is affected by the sun just as bad as the rest of them, but because whatever in his DNA has allowed him to stay alive, it could be that. They're not going to be like, oh, here's an all-American meat-loving motherfucker that'll be our hero to take us to the new ways, And
I agree with you. And when I read the novel, which the novel is fantastic, it holds up to this day. When I read the novel, I was like, I didn't imagine a guy who was like a big, like, action hero type guy. He was more of like an average dude. And like, I feel like the, I wouldn't say frailty, but just like the non-athleticism of Price in the movie actually worked to make him sympathetic as a hero, to me at least in the movie. He
didn't ask to be the last man. It was a fluke that he was, and it's not a great existence. And I'm sorry, but can we just discuss, I knew it just by watching this film, he's a tall-ass motherfucker.
Yeah, he was a very tall, lanky guy.
Yes, he is 6'4", and I don't even think he's lanky. There's lankier guys than him. I thought he was.
Well, there are, yeah.
I thought he was pretty average looking, but I knew by the way he has a slump. He has the tall person slump, and y'all can't help it. I mean, I stand like I'm bigger than I am. I'm not, especially when I'm facing somebody who's 6'4". But I'm looking and I'm like, they can't fit him and his feet into a shot. Not without being far. I was like, cameras they weren't as advanced as they are now. I'm like, he's a tall motherfucker. So I had to Google it. Yeah, 6'4". I think that 6'4" is not even average now. We're not even close. So imagine back in the day.
Yeah, and maybe that too is what they were arguing. Like, and actually I have seen that because they said they wanted somebody with more of like an average build that's not as tall and thin as what Vincent Price was. And I'm just like, why does that matter? Like, I don't understand why that is a complaint against this movie. Like, it's one thing if you say that like his line delivery was a little eccentric or whatever, which I didn't even really get that because he's been way more eccentric in movies than this.
Yeah, I thought he was actually. I'm not going to say bland because he wasn't boring, but he spoke as if there's no one to speak to. Like,
which is the point.
Yeah. He was. In a way boring, but not. It's hard to say. I wasn't like I wasn't like, oh my God, this is Vincent Price. I wasn't starstruck when I saw him. I've never seen any of these movies other than I Am Legend, And I was just like, how much life is there in someone when there's no life around you? Even the ones that are alive around him are dead, technically.
I think going by what you're saying is, and it's a good point. The lifelessness that there might be in any of his delivery is just like that monotonous, like, I'm alive another day.
Yes.
Let me go do my routine that is pointless, like he's at the point where he's kind of like giving up on everything a little bit.
Yeah, and like, I don't fucking blame him.
I mean, he literally spends his night just barricaded inside, wakes up, has to go get fresh garlic of what's left, which is getting thin. He has to go and he has to, like, whatever bodies of the zombies that are, / vampires outside overnight have died because they feed upon one another whenever they can't get fresh blood. He collects them up, takes them to the plague pits, and then tries to make it home by night so that he can, do it all over again. That's not an existence,
Yeah.
That's, I mean, he is trying to clear out the city. He's got a goal, but like, it's only like a half-hearted one. I mean, it's really just like, I'm the only person around, and he does get on the radio and try to contact other people, but there is nobody answering him at all.
At this point, Vincent Price is the equivalent of a young child being told, go out and play, find something to do, get a hobby. He's trying, but he's tired of it. Nobody wants to play with him. The hobbies are all the same. Nothing new is coming out. There's no good movies in the theater.
That's true. There's a few of these movies that really scenes in all these movies that really sell the apocalyptic feeling, but I feel like this one really has it going on with like the shots of like the empty streets, especially whenever it's like it's more closed in on him through most of the apocalypse part of it.
Yeah.
But the pre-apocalypse is set up in this movie way better than it is in all the other ones. Like, to me, I mean, because you get to spend some time with him as like they're hearing about this European plague that's rolling in, and like people are slowly, like, you can see his life, like he's got next door neighbors who are having their like dead loved ones carted off by the military.
Yeah.
You see him lose his daughter. You see him at work trying to come up with a cure for the disease, and like it's and basically every day he comes to work, there's less and less people there, to the point that he's literally the last one that's come in at all to even try to do anything on it. I feel like this sells the whole apocalyptic feeling way better than some of the later films in the series. To me, I don't know how you felt about it, but
I would say that with him, you saw from the beginning of the film that he had the tenacity to be the last man, even though he didn't intend to. And it goes into some of the scenes that you've brought up, because while he just didn't give up, even when he knew it was over. Like, he knew his wife was sick. He knew his daughter was sick. He knew their end was coming, but he's like, let me just do my daily thing. And if I do this, he was working on a cure, I can help you guys. I can help you. You just have to be patient and live, etc. All that stuff he's trying. And then even when he goes into work, his boss is like, no one else is coming in today. Like, they had all given up. People were just giving up left and right. And he is hoping for a miracle. He's hoping to find the miracle. He's hoping it already exists, And
he even goes to Ben, who is called out for the day, and sees that he's sick. And Ben's just like, it's over. We're fucked, One thing that struck me as really creepy, and only because we've lived through this now, is the scene where his wife is talking about his daughter, and how she's got the virus, and how she's going to take the daughter to the doctor. And he begs with her. He's like, you do not do this. If you take her to the doctor, they will tell the military, and she will be in the plague pit. And after 2020 and seeing what they did to some people who got COVID, that's actually, it happened. Yeah. In some cases. It really did.
China, it was wild. They literally had bodies covered in sheets in the street. It was like, legit like the plague.
And I know that, like, you can just extrapolate what happened from the Black Plague to, future ones, because humans we repeat stuff, and we have repeated the same things over and over again. It's just odd seeing a movie like this that was made in the 60s kind of have some of the hints of COVID, even before.
Oh my God. Several
ever
of
hit.
these movies, honestly.
Yeah. Visually, this isn't the most striking of any of these
No.
movies, but I actually enjoy the look of the ghouls in this because they look a lot. And George Romero could say what he wants because this came out shortly before his movie. They look a lot like Night of the Living Dead ghouls. They look a lot like them.
Yeah, it's they were zombies. There's zombies that could bite you and turn you into a vampire zombie. Garlic also is not your friend in this movie.
No. The mirror thing they were able to get around a little bit, but I mean, just the way they moved, how slow they were, it's got a very zombie apocalypse feel to it. I mean, you can throw out the vampire thing. They were about as far from any kind of standard vampires as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And actually, that's one of the things that Matheson hated about the movie was if you read the book, in the book, they're very agile. He made them very much like the old school vampires. They could climb, they could, get into places they shouldn't. Because of their supernatural, strengths and stuff. This movie slowed them down, made them more like zombies, which they, actually, foretold the coming of in just a few years' time or whatever. So, story. This is the closest to the book of all these movies, and it's my favorite because of it. I mean, now I know Richard Matheson was ashamed of it and when his name taken off of it, but to this day, I don't understand why, because this is as close as they have ever come to making that book into a movie. It deviates in a lot of places, but it's got the ascent, and it even shows the before times and the after times way better than any of the movies that were filmed after this.
Yeah. Do I go into it now? I don't know what it was.
Go ahead and say it.
I don't know what it is about this movie, but this is the first old movie aside from 13 Ghosts that I was like, this is fucking amazing. I fucking like this film. So, spoiler alert, guys. I fucking liked it. I didn't like it. I loved it. I have not read I Am Legend because that's what these books are based off of, right?
Yes.
I Am Legend. I have not read that book, so I can't compare to them. But something about this movie, the only thing visually you're going to get from this movie is the actors. And let's be honest, Vincent Price at 54 years old, I looked it up. That's how old he was. Strikingly handsome for that age. His wife, who was in her 20s in this movie, fucking gorgeous. Those women back in the day, just so fucking classically beautiful,
And it was filmed, and they got Italian women, which also they always accentuated any of their features, and you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
They always made sure they got knockouts, whenever they got them in their movies.
They did. They made sure they got knockouts, but they also made them look like naturally beautiful, not overly done beautiful. I don't know how they managed. Well, probably because the women were just already naturally beautiful. So there's that. Even the lady at the end of the movie who was like, she was technically one of them, but she had a vaccine to kind of keep her controlled to a degree. Yeah, she was gorgeous too, even when she was all disheveled and everything.
Yeah, there was one scene where she almost got a little on the ratchet side or whatever you want to say, but that was right as she was turning over to one of them without her, vaccine hit. So
yeah, this movie was very much, obviously it was based only off of one person, the last man on earth, but he had to emote for everything. He had to show compassion, which he did for, animals. It's hard to have compassion for these people that are trying to kill him every night.
And he doesn't have compassion for them because he sees them as just he sees it as they're suffering and he needs to put them out of their misery. That's where he's coming from with all that.
Yeah, that's true. He's working on it, and he has to show anger. He has to show, desperation. I don't think he showed desperation very well though. Like when he's chasing the girls, like, "Oh wait, I want to talk to you." It was just that old classic time of, they only do so much. Now they're more dramatic about it.
Yeah. One thing that comes across in this that a little bit, but not as much as in the book, is the fact that the one reason he could have killed Ben his next door neighbor, which goes by a different name in the book, but it's still, you know, the same type of character. He could have killed that character long ago. Like, that character is easily killed, but the reason he doesn't is because there's like almost a sadomasochistic thing about it. It's like, that's his one connection to the past. So like it's like almost, it's a reminder of what he lost, but at the same time, it's nostalgic. So that's the reason he doesn't kill Ben, even though Ben's like the biggest pain in his ass. You know, it's like every night. It's because it's like, okay, that still reminds me that I, you know, of where I came from. So that's, you know, it's almost like a little bit of a, you know, him just, it's like an inner pain that he's just allowing himself to feel every night, to feel something, because, you know, he doesn't have anything anymore to really go on.
Technically, he could talk to Ben. Just saying.
He could, but like Ben's just all like, since, I mean, and they did a good job of, you know, bringing this over a little bit from the book too. His next door neighbor, which I think is a Jewish character in the book, and they make a big deal of that in the book too, that the religious symbols only apply to the, you know, to the vampires / zombies if they were religious in life. And his next door neighbor doesn't respond to crosses, but if you show him like a Hebrew, you know, like star or whatever, then like he, you know, that actually repels him because of his religious beliefs. But like, it's one of those things where if his like Ben hates him or is so bitter at him over not believing him over the virus that like he refuses to, I mean, like that's what fuels him every night. Yeah. So if he did talk to him, that's all he would ever get out of him is just like the hatred, you know?
Well, I mean, it's better than nothing. I'm just kidding. I don't know what I would do in that situation. I don't know how one has the will to live that long when you're literally by yourself. Like, to not be driven mad, which he kind of thought he was. Well, that might have been the Omega Man, but
they show the insanity more in Omega Man. That's the one benefit it has over this movie. But like, there's a little bit of that in this one. I mean, he does kind of, I mean, you can kind of see he's like a little frayed at the edges, and I think that's more like Vincent Price and, you know, like the way he comes across, but he does bring that a little bit.
Yeah. So that was the visuals. Did we go over the story? Because I felt like we kind of steeped into acting already. The story is pretty, well, you said it follows the story of the book, but I don't think a lot of people know the book so much as they do the movies.
The book is basically, I mean, a similar situation to what you see in this movie. You start out and you're following Robert Neville. I don't even know if he was a virologist. I think that might have been added in this movie because I think he's just like an average everyday guy. And he just so happened to have been like maybe a civil engineer. There was some reason why he was in another country at some point in his life. And whenever he was in like South America or someplace like that, he was bit by like a vampire bat, and like he got a little bit of a virus, but he got over it, and that somehow made him immune to the vampire virus.
He got the China flu.
Yeah, basically. And he became immune to it. And so like, that's the reason he's the only person who's left alive, and you're kind of following him along, and he goes back and he, you know, like when he meets certain vampires who are from his past, he kind of he does flashbacks in the book, and you kind of see his life before the apocalypse, but you kind of follow him as he goes along, and he finds these nests of vampires, and he takes them out, one at a time until he finds the dog. And and it's way more drawn out in the book than it is in this movie. He spends time with that dog. That's like that. You can tell it focuses on his mental aspects, and like he actually has something alive that he can, spend time with.
In the movie, it was like he was so excited to have a friend.
Yeah, and he is in the book too, and they spend time together until eventually the dog does run off one day, and then presumably gets hurt by one of the crazy vampires, the ones that have no control over anything.
Yeah,
and then he has to he does what he does, and then he's distraught again, and then he sees the girl. And she seems to be alive, and then he thinks that, until he finds out otherwise. And then that's when, and the ending's kind of similar. They bring him to like this church-like setting, and they basically sacrifice him. But in the book, it's way more negative because he's like looked under a microscope. He's been he's been like freelancing as, like studying like the virus or whatever in his spare time. And he happens to have looked at the blood of the girl who kind of sold him out, because she sells him out in the book.
Yeah.
And whenever he looks under a microscope, he sees that where she's so confident that she's like the new breed and they're going to start a new society, he sees that her blood starts breaking down just like the other vampires, the crazy ones.
Yeah.
So all these new vampires are going to go insane just like the other ones. It's just a slower process. And so when they're killing him, he's kind of got like a cynical laugh about it. He's just like, all right, you're doomed too. Fuck you, that sort of thing.
Yeah, they kind of show that in Omega Man, that even though you're part of this new solution, if you will, or new breed, he's noticing that he's finding dead ones, and for no reason. It's like they just fallen over and died, even after they've had fresh food, Also, I found it kind of strange. So in this movie, towards the end, he, quotation mark, cured her. He did an antibody infusion, which also way ahead of its time. For those listeners out there that don't know, I had an antibody infusion for COVID. Never had the vaccine though, and it works. Just so I am living proof that it worked. But anyways, she had an antibody infusion, and she gets bit by, what's his name, Ben?
Yes.
Ben breaks it. Which, by the way, first of all, can we talk about? I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Let's talk about the barricading of this house and how weak it was. And night after night, a horde. It's like a neighborhood of hordes. It's not like it's not like the entire city coming after him, but it's like a neighborhood. Every night they're coming after him, and they can see in his windows. They can antagonize him. They can talk to him. These boards are barely on, and they've been coming after him for 2 years, but it's just one night Ben just tries the back door, and he's able to get in. No fucking problem.
I always take that in this movie, and you have a point, but I always take it in this movie is that like one of two possibilities. Robert has, because the girl is introduced, he is getting sloppy.
Okay.
He's not doing,
which I agree.
He's more focused on her. And also, I wonder if it's a death wish. Like he doesn't care anymore, so he's not doing what he needs to do to keep them out.
I mean, do you think, well, maybe prior to meeting her, but after meeting her, well, I guess he's very unsure about her, and he finds out real quick in this movie who she is. So I was about to say, because you feel like that would, even then though, I would want to know more. I mean, just like R in, Warm Bodies, it's like, why are you doing this? I'm terrified of you, but I'm also intrigued. Like, I don't know.
I don't, and he doesn't get a lot of time with her, to my knowledge, in the book either, because like he has way more time with the dog, and then like then it's like then he meets her, but then like she quickly sells him out. And this one, she kind of sells him out, but then at the same time, when she realizes what he is, and that might be in the book, it's been a while since I read it, she kind of has a change of heart, but it's too late. They already know where he's at. So.
Oh yeah, they know what's up. But yeah, so does the fucking neighborhood. It's not like it's been a surprise. It's not a secret, okay? You're just not working hard enough. I don't know. But anyways, going back, so she's been healed. She's got the antibody infusion. Ben bites her. Does that turn her into one again? Does that counteract the infusion?
No, I wouldn't think so, because to my knowledge, if Robert was to get bit, it wouldn't affect him that way. It's just they can still kill him, like tear him apart or whatever they're going to do. But like their bites have no effect on him because he's immune to the virus. So.
I was wondering about that. I was like, oh, fuck, all that work for nothing.
So she, at the end of the movie, she is immune, and in theory could pass on her immunity to them if they were able to synthesize it and do whatever they need to do with it. But I don't know if they don't really give a hint that that's what's going to happen to this new, group of people. They
leave it open to, I don't know, whatever you think is going to happen. It's a choose your own adventure in your own mind.
The music in this one, surprisingly, I I feel like there's little of it. It's more like classical in places. But one of the things that I think this movie does really well is that there's a lot of no music, meaning it's got like that empty, like apocalyptic feeling to it. It's like there's no sound, you know.
When there's no music in one of these classic films, it's almost like the voice of the actor who is on screen is the melody that you hear. They're the music, you know, the tone of their voice and how they're pronouncing things, etc. is what is the rhythm of what you're feeling. So, if anything, it sets the tone of how intense the scene is. Are we scared? Are we calm? What's going on? You know?
Yeah, I mean, the actor then sets the stage more than the music necessarily, and there's nothing wrong with that because I mean, if you got a good actor, they can sell it, and maybe in some movies they actually over rely on music to kind of sell the mood when the actor should be bringing more of it themselves.
Yeah, and I think the music was appropriate because when like someone's breaking in somewhere, you know, which by the way, the glass breakage in these films so weak. I wonder if that's what it really sounded like versus them using a soundstage and breaking glass or adding the sound of glass breaking, because it was very Walmart.
Well, also in this movie, I mean, it's very noticeable in the flashback scenes. All of the actors besides Vincent Price could not speak English, so you can tell there's dubs going on because their mouths don't match what they're saying.
That's
exactly.
so funny. I noticed that, but I didn't think about it. Oh, that's how.
I mean, it's not terrible in this. I've seen way worse, but I mean, Vincent Price, obviously being with him most of the movie, you only really notice it whenever they go back to the other actors. I mean, other than him.
Yeah.
But I love this movie. For an old movie, I think it's one of Vincent Price's best, honestly. I mean, it's actually very creepy in parts just because of the tone of the movie and the setting and everything else. It's not scary, I mean, but it
Speak for yourself. I'm just kidding.
It sells what it's trying to go after.
Yeah.
Though, that post-apocalyptic feeling for sure. I mean,
definitely the feeling of loneliness.
Yeah, and I know that Romero was inspired more by the novel than the movie, but I can't help but think that he might have seen this movie at some point, and it also stirred some things, you know, as far as like what he wanted to go for. Do you want to go into trivia now on this one? To more accurately show how grueling it was for his character to survive, Vincent Price insisted on lifting real people in the back of his car instead of dummies.
Wow.
This is why it seems like he's taking extra care with the bodies and why it's so hard for him to lift them up. For the scene at the pit, however, he's obviously handing dummies for obvious reasons. He's throwing them down a big-ass pit.
Yeah.
I think that's a good call because, I mean, it really sells it. I mean, it's like, and you think about it, I mean, that'd be rough, like having to lift like whole fucking bodies.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
And then you don't want to drop them on their head or anything.
Established by many reviewers, including George A. Romero himself, as a graphic blueprint for Night of the Living Dead. So he actually did watch this movie, and he did actually get inspired by parts of it. And I know the scenes of Ben outside hammering on the wooden boards. I mean, come on, that's straight Night of the Living Dead.
Oh, absolutely. Which is, I mean, I was thinking that, but I was also just like at the same time thinking, don't get upset because every film they got a little bit better at barricading or locking themselves up. And yeah, because there's 2 other films and they got better every time. But this first one was very, sir, my 13-year-old could break into that.
He does a lot better job in the novels of talking about how every day he has to go back and get like more boards to because they pried off parts of it. It's very grueling for him because most of his day is fixing the house so that you can get inside of it at night. I mean, which makes sense. Vincent Price admitted in later years to having a fondness for the movie and rated it as superior to the Omega Man in 1971.
I mean, he's partial though.
Well, it's funny because we'll get to a statement made by Charlton Heston regarding what he views as a superior movie between these.
Okay.
And you guess which one he thinks was the better movie. Although this is much more faithful to the book than the Omega Man and I Am Legend, which are based on the same novel, it changes the main character's name from Robert Neville to Robert Morgan, while the other two leave it unchanged. There's also another noticeable difference. It depicts the vampires as slow-moving and uncoordinated. In the novel, they're fast and agile, like you would think a vampire would be. The script was written in part by Richard Matheson, but he was dissatisfied, like I said, and asked to be credited as Logan Swanson so that nobody would know it was him that helped make this.
I think that was a mistake, personally.
I still think he was overly critical of this one. Like, but
and how big was Vincent Price at this point of the film? Was he well established?
Or the 60s, he was pretty well known for, making horror movies. I mean, he was kind of a horror icon. I don't know, but like I said, he was mostly known for being the Gothic, movies or whatever, the Edgar Allan Poe style movies.
It's hard because we're looking at Vincent Price in a different way. We're looking at him as a national treasure that he is, and then we're looking at him in this film. We're like, what are you talking about? You had a national treasure, but they didn't know that at the time.
Yeah, and well, also I think Richard Matheson was upset with this because think of it this way: I Am Legend is the book that actually got him like his biggest like career break period. So he was very partial to the book. He was very partial to like how it looked in his mind, and I guarantee, just like Stephen King with The Shining, even though Stanley Kubrick did deliberately fuck with King on that one, so there's some reasons why he was pissed off. But just like Stephen King, it's like you see your baby put up on screen and it doesn't match what you had in your head, and you're like, fuck that guy. He didn't get what I was going for,
Yeah.
Whenever that was when it was done. I think that's part of it. I think that's why Matheson was more upset with this one than he was any of the other ones. Also, I'll get into it in a second. He actually had a different version of this planned a few years before, that he was going to work with Hammer Horror to make, and things fell through. And I think that's like in a couple of like seconds here that I'll get into that. But that would have been a drastically different movie. Vincent Price is the only cast member to speak his own English, as I've stated earlier. Richard Matheson originally wrote the script in 1957, at which point it was to have been produced by Hammer Films with Fritz Lang slated to direct. Matheson was disappointed when Lang was replaced shortly before filming began.
Matheson was just a bitter Betty this whole time, it sounds like.
Yeah, well, he had like bigger plans for the movie, and it kind of like it's like, oh, we can't make that because of this, that, or this reason.
Okay.
Handed it off to the Italians. I think the Hammer couldn't do it because they said it was too graphic or something, because Britain has always been like very peculiar with like how much just graphic. They don't care about nudity. They'll put that in there day and night, but if it's any kind of violence, they're like, whoa, cut that shit out, or we're not going to let your movie go by. And the Italians are like, all right, we got titties, we got blood, let's do this. They don't care.
We got titties, we got blood, yeah.
The first of the three feature film adaptations, of course, with the Omega Man and I Am Legend coming after. The novel was also made into a short film called Soy Leyenda in 1967. So I guess like a Mexican, or maybe it could be Italian, I guess.
I Am Legend. Why did that take me forever to... Oh, my God, I'm so dumb. I'm like, I was thinking Soylent Green.
Which is funny, given who's in Omega Man. And
yeah.
Despite being a disappointment at the box office, the movie attained a cult following later on. The film was originally going to be produced by Hammer Films, like I said. They decided not to make the film and passed the script over to U.S. associate Robert L. Lippert, which produced the film in Italy. Hammer had tried to set this up as in the late 50s as a Night Creatures a name or whatever. Stanley Baker, Paul Massey, Lawrence Harvey, and Kieran Moore were all considered for the Robert Neville part. I don't get the whole thing gets Price in this, but whatever.
Yeah.
Since a clerical error caused the film's copyright to expire, which is funny because Night of the Living Dead has a very similar problem, it is now in the public domain and has been released on numerous low-budget home video editions. The Richard Matheson source novel is still under copyright, however. Richard Matheson himself felt that Vincent Price was miscast as Robert Morgan.
Again, they didn't know that they had a legend in their film.
I just think I think he was very tied to the novel, and he had a certain image of who he wanted to play the part, and he couldn't let it go.
He absolutely couldn't. And I mean, like, I get it. It's his baby. You did mention that, but man, like, I wonder, do we know if in the future he came to realize how lucky he was to have Vincent Price?
I don't think he ever went back and gave this movie any credit whatsoever at all, like later on. And it's sad because, and we even covered one of Richard Matheson's movies already, The Legend of Hell House or whatever. I think when we covered it in Ghost Season, I mean, he's had he's had a lot of movie adaptations of his work, but this is one of his like low points because that book meant more to him than most of his other stuff, apparently. The movie takes place in 1968, even though it came out in 64, so it was set in the future from the time that it was released. Kind of, I guess, to give people more of like, this could happen, like vibe or whatever. And Charlton Heston, here we go, viewed this film before proceeding with a remake of The Omega Man, and he described this version as incredibly botched, totally unfrightening, ill-acted, sloppily written, and photographs. So Charlton Heston was a major bitch about this movie. So
my God. he described The Last Man as this, not Omega Man.
He described this, not the last. He thought the Omega Man was great, And
because for a minute there, I thought you were describing Omega Man. And another spoiler alert, just so we're clear, I liked Omega Man. I just think one's better than the other, and I don't think it was Omega Man.
I agree with you on both accounts. I like both movies, but I think that this movie is the superior version of this. Of this story.
And it's not because of Vincent Price. Now, dumb moment here. Everyone's going to be like, Raina, what the fuck is wrong with you? I was like, this guy looks like Vincent Price. So I wasn't sold on the movie because it was like Vincent Price. Like, I was like, oh, this bro looks like Vincent Price. Because, again, I started this film at work on a not as busy day, a very light day, so I can kind of fill the time. And I got to watch a good chunk of it. And then I realized this movie is actually pretty good. We're going to watch the rest of this at home. So that's what I did. And clearly at that point, I was like, oh, well, this is Vincent Price. How did I not know by the voice? Although I'm sure there's certain voice acting he's done that he's a little more dramatic with his voice. I'm surprised he didn't do Haunted Mansion, honestly.
He was not the Vincent Price dramatic that he was when he did the Thriller rap. I mean, it was night and day difference between, the two. That's what I'm saying. Like, you can't use that. Well, Vincent Price always said this, he was kind of a weird sounding individual. It's like he wasn't. I mean, in this movie, he was about as plain Jane as he ever got. Like, I mean, he was way more dramatic in most of his other, roles as, any of the Poe films that he did.
Yeah.
So anyways, anything that you want to say about this movie before we call it quits on this part of the episode and bring it back up again and the Omega Man and I Am Legend next episode?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate how surprised I was that I liked a black and white film. I maybe have a handful of black and white films that I like.
I'll tell you, I remember liking this when I saw it, and when rewatching it, I enjoyed the whole thing all the way through again. Wasn't even tempted to look at my phone. I'm like, I like this movie. I really do.
The fact that it was okay, because when I was at work and I was like, oh no, I need to watch this at home, that 18-minute drive home was torture. I was wanting to know what was happening in the film. And I was genuinely surprised in the film at how intrigued I was by everything. Like, I wasn't scared by the zombies or anything, but there was definitely some exciting parts, if you will, that get you like excited and yikes, that was kind of scary. Or, oh my God, they're coming. Things like that. Or hey, there's a person. Or hey, there's a dog. So many different emotions were felt in this film. And I was like, holy crap, I'm liking this old ass film.
Yeah, to me, it's just like I said. I think it captures that lonely post-apocalyptic feeling way better than many movies that try to replicate it. It's got that vibe to it, and that's what, and just the way that they set up, like I said, the flashback scenes just help it so much, in my opinion, because you see society breaking down in this movie, which is. This predates Night of the Living Dead. This is the first, really movie this is the first movie that really does that, where you see society breaking down and a little bit at a time, all the stuff that we've become used to in modern living, even though this was in the 60s, not too far off. It's just going by the wayside because, in this case, a virus is, wiping everybody out, which after COVID, has a whole other meaning behind it. But yeah, I'm glad you dug it because I really like this one. And it's the spoiler alert for going forward. It's the closest to the book, and it's my favorite of the three. Before I get to the other ones. What was I going to say about
I'm
not saying that I don't like parts of the other ones. I really do. But
I'm sure
the overall package.
We'll get into that. But did you think I was going to like this film? I know you're always hopeful that I'm going to like a film. Or are you pretty much resigned to the fact that, she's not going to like an old film?
I was watching it and I was like, I was really worried because especially with the zombies being like we said so slow and everything like that. I'm like this is probably going to be too cheesy for her. I don't think she'll like this.
Never think that about the zombies because the slow ones scare me just as bad as the fast ones. The fast ones I'm like, fuck you, you don't exist. But the slow ones, I feel like they just suddenly there. And they get you, and you're done. You're fucking done. And I can't handle it. My heart can't handle it at all.
Well, we're going to be talking about zombies that can form whole soliloquies in the next movie. So join us then for Omega Man. And with that, peace be with you.
And with your spirit.